Hey everyone, so today is going to be our fourth and final video in the series on the social cognitive theory. So today we're going to talk about both socialization and reciprocal determinism. So starting off with socialization, this is a key cultural process and inherent part of social cognition. And this is where the individual learns to behave compatibly with social and cultural norms, and through them acquires a sense of identity. It does start early in life, 2 to 3 years old. And, the first people that are socializing us are usually our parents or our guardians. And then it continues throughout life as the individual learns and refines their behaviors. While you're in school, sometimes the socializer is, or the socialization model is your teacher or your peers. Later on, it could be a spouse, it could be the media. There's a lot of different factors that socialize and teach us the norms and rules of behavior. So in DOTY 2014, this was a study that we looked at with the biological level of analysis with pheromones. And the aim was to show that social conditioning and social learning and socialization might be the reason for judging a smell as male or female. So again, male and female armpit sweat was collected on gauze pads and given to male and female participants in sniff bottles. They were then instructed in all the studies that they were to tell which smells were male or female by smelling the bottles. And then they included instructions that some of the three smells were female and some male and some in combinations of each other. In all the studies, though, participants rated the intensity and pleasantness of the smells. So when the smells, in the results of the study, when the smells were from both males and females, about half the participants got the male and female smells correct. And all participants rated the strongest smells male and both the weaker and neutral smells female. And so when the smells were just male or female, participants said the strongest smells were male, weaker or neutral smells female. But no difference was found between the ones in combination. And so smell identification in this case could have easily occurred from social conditioning. Our socialization here is the factor that may contribute to our sense of what is tied to what is male or female, in these cases, smell. And our social conditioning or learning may be key to our understanding of attraction and not instincts. And that leads us into a special case of someone named GENIE the Wild Child. If you took general psychology, you most likely saw a video on GENIE the Wild Child, but this was a young girl in the 60s and early 70s who had been raised until she was 13 in a very, very abusive environment. She was tied to a potty chair. And when she was discovered by California authorities at age 13, she was unable to talk. She was barely able to walk. She was shown to have the mental capacities of someone with an intellectual disability. And so this is an extreme case, but the lack of socialization in this case hindered her development emotionally, cognitively, and physically. And like it says down here, you cannot use this for SAQs and ERQs because what we are talking about is not the published study of GENIE the Wild Child. So this is a video clip. You can watch it in the PowerPoint version of this, but we're going to move on past this. It's a good introduction to GENIE. All right, so in terms of what socializes us, there are two forces in play in addition to some others, but the two ones we're going to talk about right now are enculturation and acculturation. And our socialization often relies on the learning of our first culture, and that is enculturation. So the acquisition of the necessary and appropriate norms and skills of one's own culture of origin. And this is guided directly by parents and later by peer groups, also by media, TV shows, movies, what have you. And this greatly contributes to our sense of personal identity. On the other hand, acculturation is the learning of a new culture. And so if you were to move to a completely different country, you would have to then learn the norms and expectations of you within that society. And so this is occurring more and more with greater travel and more globalized society. So going to college in another country like England even, or Canada, or even another part of the United States would change your behaviors and identity in some way. Even for me, when I got out of college, I moved to rural South Carolina to teach, and this was completely different than where I had grown up in the Midwest in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I slowly had to learn new norms, new rules of behavior, new slang terms like beau, which means like man or dude. And so all of these types of things took an acculturation process, even though I was living within the same country. So enculturation can be thought of as first culture learning, and acculturation can be thought of as second culture learning. Now, in showing off the power of enculturation is the idea that acculturation rarely completely replaces that original enculturation. It does tend to modify it, but the first culture that we learn provides an indelible mark on our schemas, how we organize the world, our thoughts, our actions. And oftentimes, this changes us in a couple different ways. The first is behaviorally, and this is the means of addressing people, how we act in daily life, and then also cognitively, so our attitudes. Now, in terms of strategies of acculturation, Berry from 1974 came up with 4 of them. The first is assimilation, when the individual strives or is forced to adopt the attitudes and behaviors of the majority culture and exits the original culture in the process. So historically in this country, back in the late 1800s, mid 1800s as well, assimilation was the ways in which people tried to make people comply and conform to what it meant to be an American. And so with the vast numbers of immigrants that were coming in at the time, school was seen as a socialization process and an assimilation process. And even for Native Americans, many of them were taken from their homes and put into boarding schools where they were forced to take on, American names. And a lot of these were like historical figures, like you'd suddenly be named George, like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. But anymore, assimilation is not seen as successful of a strategy for acculturation, especially if we want people to be more of their authentic selves. Number 2 is integration, where the individual fits in with the majority culture but still maintains the original culture. And I would say most people are fitting into this camp at this time. And that doesn't mean that the new culture does not affect us, but they do try to maintain the original culture as well. Number 3 is separation, where the individual minimizes contact with the majority culture, but strives to maintain the original culture. So like the Amish are people that separate themselves from society. And then number 4, marginalization, where the individual is excluded from the majority culture and cannot maintain the original culture. And this could be due to situational factors like language barriers or discrimination, where they are marginalized within society. So just a few final notes on enculturation and acculturation. Acculturation is often not easy. It's not easy to move to somewhere else. It's not easy to develop new customs and new culture, especially, as an adult, but also as a kid as well. And this can lead to what is called acculturation stress. And this is the psychological strain of striving to adapt to a different culture. And we've seen this within Hispanic populations who have moved to the United States, where rates of depression actually go up the longer that they are here. And this could be due to being far away from home, at times or often being separated from family and friends that they love, possible discrimination within the United States. Those sorts of things can create a lot of acculturation stress. But this can be avoided through activities with the original or enculturated culture. For instance, like Irish American clubs or German American clubs or Polish American clubs were set up to counter this issue. And so staying connected to that original culture is very important. Also, things like Chinatown in major American cities could be ways in which people were able to try to keep elements of home while adapting to this new place. And then when acculturation does present stress, people often choose to simply integrate and assimilate. And this can create a great generational divide within the family. I don't know if some of you have parents who are from different countries, but oftentimes the cultural values of the parents, which, they were enculturated in a different culture, could be far different from the children. And so this can create some tension within the home. Now, in terms of the other characteristic of the social cognitive theory that we're going to talk about today, which is reciprocal determinism, is based on a few factors. The first is that cultures tend to be dynamic. They aren't static, they do grow and change over time. If you went back to the United States in the 1850s, you may see elements that you recognize of the United States, but there's probably going to be several things that are far different. Whether it's dress or language or customs and beliefs, those sorts of things. And this change is also due to a principle of social cognitive theory known as reciprocal determinism. And so this is an idea that there's a bidirectional relationship between people and culture. And what I mean by this is that culture influences us, but we also influence culture. And so we often self-regulate, we are self-reflecting, we are proactive, and we can change the environment as well. And we've seen some of that this summer in terms of people's ideas and how we, as a country, move forward to change, social ideals that have not been helpful for everyone. So the reciprocal determinism is a model of three interacting features. The first one are personal factors, physical, cognitive, emotional things with the individual. The second one is behavior. And then the third one, is environment. And this is based on this concept of reciprocity. They influence each other mutually and bidirectionally. So environment will influence behavior. Behavior influences personal factors influence environment, and vice versa in all those cases. So for this example, I have a person's emotional state or personal factor may influence their behavior and in turn influence others' behaviors, environment. The environmental factor will continue to influence the person's emotional state, and so on and so forth. And so this could be how aggression escalates in a conflict, right? If something continues to rise up in the environment, then you're a little bit more on edge, and aggression can form from there. So the study that is going to serve as the bookend to our talk today is from Williams and Williams, 2010. This is a correlational design that was aimed to gather greater evidence for reciprocal determinism. And so what they did was that they collected a large data set on mathematics self-efficacy and achievement in 15-year-old children across 33 nations, and then applied a complex statistical model to see if reciprocal determinism model fits the data better than other simpler models. And what that did was that it supported reciprocal determinism in 24 of 33 nations. And so this could show that reciprocal determinism is a universal phenomenon, right? So in this case, their environment or their experiences influence their self-efficacy, And then that influenced their ability to achieve, right? And so again, school children who believe they can cope well with math tended to perform well on math tests. At the same time, doing well on math tests further increased the self-efficacy, and that second point is also important as well. All right, if you have any questions on socialization or reciprocal determinism, please come find me, and I hope you all have a great day.